Your Honor, my client does not wish to divorce and requests the court to order counseling. She is convinced that their marriage is strong enough to overcome the current crisis with a little intervention. This is her attorney's statement. My attorney stood up. Your Honor, the case has been going on for a year involving several men, which led to the birth of a child. This is hardly a simple matter, especially when DNA tests confirm that the child is not from my client. We see no point in continuing this farcical situation with the marriage. Counseling will change nothing. It is precisely because of the child that I am inclined to order counseling, the judge replied. The child needs a stable home to grow up in. If you think I'm going to raise someone else's child, I interrupted loudly. My attorney winced. The judge banged the gavel. One more word and I will hold you in contempt of court, he shouted at me. I am ordering a month of counseling with 2 sessions per week. You will attend, Mr. Smith, or face the consequences. He gave me a brief glance, then banged the gavel again. That is all he said. Diana, my almost ex-wife, had a satisfied look on her face as I entered the counselor's office. I am Dr. Sullivan. But you can call me Gerald. May I call you Brian? He smiled at me. No, you may not. You will address me as Mr. Smith, I replied. Bree, there is no need, Julia began. And you do not speak to me in any way, I retorted to her. I think we need to calm down, Dr. Sullivan said. Please, Mr. Smith, have a seat. He gestured to one of the 2 chairs placed side by side in front of his desk. I moved my chair about 2 meters away from Julia and sat down. Gerald sighed. All right then, he began. I did not hear the rest as I took off my headphones and started listening to music on my phone. Gerald just looked at me for a while before turning to talk to Julia. I did not hear what he said, so I continued to fiddle with my phone, listening to my music. After about 15 minutes, I noticed Julia stand up. She gave me a heavy look and walked out of the office. I took off my headphones. Well, Doc, great session. See you on Thursday. I am canceling the sessions and sending a report to the judge. Even better. And with that, I walked out of the office. The judge was clearly displeased. He gave me cause not to hold him in contempt, he demanded, looking at my attorney. Your Honor, you ordered my client to attend the sessions, and he complied by showing up for the first one as ordered. It is the counselor who canceled the remaining sessions. The counselor's report clearly states that your client made no effort to participate in the session. He put on headphones and ignored us the whole time, the judge countered. The order required your presence, my attorney argued. He was present. Since the counselor concluded that additional sessions would be pointless, I ask you to grant the divorce as requested. No way, the judge replied. I am ordering another 4 weeks of counseling. Mr. Smith will attend and participate in the sessions. The office was set up exactly as it had been when I arrived. 2 chairs, about 30 cm apart, were facing the doctor's desk. He sat behind it. On the desk, there was nothing but a yellow notepad and a photograph of a woman, apparently around 30 years old, with a child who seemed to be about 6 years old. Mr. Smith, Dr. Sullivan said, please have a seat. I started moving the chair again. Julia tried to stop me, and I backed off. I am warning you both that any physical contact will be considered assault, I replied with appropriate force. Julia gasped, stepping back. I continued moving the chair, then sat down. Mr. Smith, the judge ordered you to participate in this session, the doctor reminded me. I am aware, I said. I am using my phone to record the session and prove my participation. My attorney informed me that some counselors might have their own agendas. Since my almost wife has been consulting with you for some time, I believe you may have already established a relationship with her, which could be biased against me. And if I do not want you to record the session, the doctor asked, then I will go back to court and request a different counselor, I replied. I have that option. I have not done so yet because it would cause even more delays. Deanna, how do you feel about the session being recorded? The doctor asked. I do not care, she replied, waving her hand. Can we just start, okay? The doctor said. What I would like to do to start with, first of all, may I ask a question? Of course, he replied. You can ask questions at any time. I might ask you to hold off in some parts of the process, but for now, go ahead. He smiled encouragingly at me. Have you ever slept with her? Diana gasped, but Gerald remained unfazed. No, he replied calmly. Julia and I have never had and never will have any intimacy. It would be inappropriate, even if I were not married and happy. Does that answer satisfy your question? I nodded. I believed him. He was probably one of the few men Diana had met in the past year who had not slept with her. All right, as I was saying, I want to start by defining our expectations. I have already spoken to Julia a few times, so I would like her to explain what I want to achieve in these sessions and what the desired outcome is. While she speaks, please refrain from comments or questions until she is finished. After Julia shares her goals, I will ask you to do the same. I remained silent, holding back any comments. I avoided looking at Julia as she began. First of all, Brian, she began. Do not talk to me, I growled. Diana, talk to me, Gerald said. Tell me what you want Mr. Smith to hear. I wanted him to know how sorry I am for hurting him. I understand that what I did was wrong, but I was so lonely with all the time he spent at work and on business trips. Now I understand how much pain I caused. If I could go back and change the past, I would do anything to fix it. I love him more than anything in the world. I truly believe that we can overcome this if he just gives me another chance. I will prove to him that I can be the best wife any man could dream of. We could raise our child together and give him a wonderful life. Maybe even have another child. I want us to be together, and I know we can overcome this. I believe we can. Gerald smiled at Julia. Good, thank you, Diana. Now it is your turn, Mr. Smith. What do you have to say? I looked at him coldly. I would like to see this lying, despicable person suffer horribly, I said. Julia began to cry and ran out of the room. That was not helpful, Gerald said. I am not trying to be helpful. This woman cheated on me for a whole year with half the men in town, got pregnant, and tried to claim the child was mine. If I had not suspected and demanded a DNA test, I would have been stuck paying child support for someone else's child. Tell me, doctor, how am I supposed to react? It is normal to feel anger, but you need to overcome that anger and think about what you had, he replied. Do you really understand what you are talking about? I countered. Have you ever felt like the love of your life, the person you trusted with all your heart and soul, and would do anything for, betrayed you so much that you started questioning your own sanity? When I found out what was going on, I wanted to do something terrible to myself. And have you noticed that she never apologized for what she did? Not for all those men, the countless lies, not for forgetting about the pregnancy, not even for not knowing who the father of the child is. The only thing you can be sure of is that it is not the person who should have fathered her child. Since you have no idea what it is like to be in my position, do not stand there with your smug smile and your book knowledge telling me to forget my anger. Right now, my anger is all I have. I just want to get rid of this cheater and try to pick up the remaining pieces. Is that considered participation? I spat out as I walked out of his office. When I got home, I decided to do a little preparation for the next session. Maybe I could finally get my point across. I asked Julia to allow us to have this session without her. Gerald stated when I entered his office the following week, I believe we can achieve more if it is just the two of us for a start, provided it still counts as the court-ordered counseling. I am more than happy to avoid being in the same room with this woman, I replied, settling into the chair and placing an A4 envelope on my lap. Please, can we avoid the insults? It is not helpful and only hinders our progress, he insisted. I am not interested in helping. I just want to get through these sessions and get rid of this cheater for good. I never wanted to participate in these sessions. She is set on making me suffer as much as possible. She does not want a divorce because the prenup will leave her with nothing, so she is trying to make me take her back. That is not going to happen. And as for the child, he is innocent. Should he not be spared? This is not my problem and not my responsibility, I countered. Should I gather all the people who could not stay together and got pregnant? Those children are not my concern, and neither is this one. Why are you so sure this will end only one way? Obviously, you once cared for her very much. Those feelings do not disappear overnight. Your anger is masking them now, but once it subsides, and believe me, it will subside, you will realize that there are still feelings to build on. Feelings that can help you rebuild your relationship and even make it stronger. That smile returned, and I wanted to hit him. It was time for him to try a little of his own medicine. I pointed to the photograph on his desk. Congratulations. You have a beautiful family. How long have you been married? We are not here to talk about my Ev. It has been 11 years, if I am not mistaken. You married your high school sweetheart right after college, waited until you had kids, and then little Ethan came along. He is 9 years old now. That photograph must have been taken a few years ago. How did you? He began to ask, but I continued. Did you know that your beloved Shirio has her own secrets? Did you know that when she says she is at pilot's class on Tuesday afternoons while you are at work, she is actually at Motel 8 on Pater, having an affair with her personal trainer? That is utterly absurd, he stammered, though I saw he was beginning to doubt. He was very pale. Is it? I asked, pulling out several photographs from the envelope. I placed the photographs one by one on his desk. They showed a slender woman entering a hotel with a young muscular man. He had his arm around her waist, and they looked at each other tenderly. Then I pulled out a DVD and placed it on the desk as well. There are also recordings from inside the room if you want real evidence of their actions. It is very explicit, so I do not recommend watching. I made the mistake of watching when I received the report from my private investigator, and those images still haunt me. He looked like he was about to be sick. And there is one more thing, I said. Ethan is not, he replied in a quiet voice. Please God, no. I pulled out a DNA report from the envelope. It seems the instructor is not the first. He might be too young to be Ethan's father, but whoever the father is, it is not you, I said softly. He stood up and ran to what I assumed was the bathroom next to his office. I heard him retching loudly into the toilet. Do you understand now? I asked when he returned to his chair, tears streaming down his cheeks. He looked at me with empty eyes. Can you see the pain she caused me, and why I need to get her out of my life? He nodded weakly. Good, I said, but there is one more thing you need to know. A look of horror flashed across his face. More, he asked, his voice filled with despair. It is all a lie, I replied. None of what I just showed you is real. As far as I know, your wife is as loving and faithful as you ever believed, and Ethan is truly your son. But the photographs, he asked. Photoshop is amazing what can be done with a few Facebook posts and a little effort, I replied grimly. If someone competent checked them, they would confirm that they are all fake. I pulled out more photographs from the envelope to prove it. Here are the originals I used to create them, and the DVD, he asked, puzzled. And the DNA report. Actually, that is a DNA report related to this treacherous cheater's child. I just changed the names and dates. He stood in a daze for a few moments as new tears began to flow down his face. Why did you do this? What did you hope to achieve by destroying my marriage, my life? He asked. That was never my intention. That is why I told you right away that it was all fake. I never wanted you or your family to suffer permanently. I just wanted you to truly understand, even for a moment, the pain I have experienced. The feelings of loss, anger, and hurt. You felt it for a few minutes. I live with it. Your temporary suffering is my daily reality. Now, being forced to sit here with this woman, listening to her talk about how much she loves me and wants me back, being forced to relive this pain over and over again. There are laws against cruel and unusual conditions. Why do they not apply here? I just want to move on, try to salvage what little is left, and get on with my life. Why will you and the courts not let me do that? I gathered all the documents from the desk and put them back in the envelope. I will leave this with you to dispose of, I said. I am truly sorry I had to do this, but I needed you to understand. And with that, I walked out of his office. Your Honor, I have the report from the court, ordered counseling my client was forced to attend. My attorney spoke to the judge again. I have a copy, the judge replied sharply. It appears the counselor believes that even after only 3 of the 8 required sessions, this marriage is beyond repair, and for the well-being of all parties involved, including the child, the best course is to allow its dissolution. Yes, Your Honor. I request that the divorce be finalized as outlined in the petition. The judge looked at me intently for a long time. I focused on looking straight ahead, avoiding eye contact. Granted, he finally announced, banging the gavel.